Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to show you how I made this little carnivorous plant terrarium. It is going to be a completely sealed unit. The lid will go on with a rubber seal, and I'm going to set it and forget it. So let's do this together. Okay, everything is laid out here for us to get started on this. 3 kinds of mosses, a reindeer lichen, couple kinds of carnivorous plants, and a few other odds and ends that I thought might be nice in this terrarium. The first thing I did was I headed outside and I filled the bottom of the terrarium with some coarse aquarium gravel. I like this stuff. I have it kicking around for projects like this. I didn't find it very good for aquariums, but it's great for this. And I wanted to fill the bottom of the terrarium a good couple inches, a little bit more than an inch, a little bit less than 2 inches probably, but a good amount for drainage, so there can be a tiny bit of water in the bottom but still have it dry up above. The other thing I did off camera was I took a piece of window screen, cut it to fit along the bottom there, and that way when I put the peat moss on the top, nothing will go through below. I also used about approximately 1 ounce of fine carbon. This is going to hopefully take care of any impurities that may arise over the course of months or hopefully years in this terrarium. Spread it out nice and thin, and that was a basic outdoor prep before we start with the actual project. Now that we're back inside, I am ready to go on this. So I put it on a little turntable, one for bonsai, but it's going to work great for this, for being able to see 360 degrees. I want to make sure the seam is along the side, so it's not in my viewing area, not in my face sort of thing, because I would hate to get this all done and then be staring at a line the whole time. So basically, next step is some pre-moistened peat moss. I bent a little spoon, and I'm actually going to use that in order to put it into the terrarium nicely. I want to do my best to keep the sides as clean as possible, so I'm going to slowly do that. Okay, with that being done, the front is slightly lower than the front, and I want to landscape now. So I am just using a simple rock from my yard. This is going to be a slate. I had to chip this stuff out when I dug my pond. I know it's very inert, and my yard is just full of it. And I don't mind the sort of rough look of it. I didn't want anything too smooth like a river rock. I wanted something more like a rough boulder to give the appearance of some size here in this miniature sort of terrarium. To place that first, I can always slightly move it later if I need to, but I like the sharp angles of it. It sort of forms a wall or a backdrop there, which is going to be great too. Next, I will take my moss with probably my trusty tweezers here, and we will shove it behind, and I think it's going to fit nicely in there. I want to have good contact with the peat so that it can stay moist. Some of it's going to be in contact with the glass, and there's going to be moisture there as well. We don't want it to dry out. Now, I also wanted to include some natural barks in my terrarium, something that I really found from outside that is going to have all kinds of little cool organisms growing on it. Something that's non-sterile with beneficial bacteria. Hopefully we'll get some copepods in there and some springtails off this. And this is a very rotten piece of oak tree branch. So it's got some cool lichens on it to start with, and a cool little fungus growing on there. And yeah, I hope that is going to naturally seed the aquarium with some organisms to help naturally break things down as we go along. So I'll get that in place with my tweezers, and yeah, I think it looks really good in there. but again, it's as much for function as it is for decoration. And now that we have that in place, I am going to put another kind of moss that I just found locally off into the corner here. Having a good pair of tweezers is really necessary for these sort of jobs. This is a 10-inch pair of tweezers. I do have a 12-inch pair as well, but I found they weren't necessary for this one. But for some with the narrower mouths, the bigger tweezers actually can come in very handy. And next, this is Sphagnum Moss here. We are going to work with some Sphagnum Moss. I need to see how it's going to fit in here first. Because I am planting this with tweezers, I need it to be a little shorter, a little bit more manageable, so I'm going to cut off the dead ends to it. And we're just going to plant the live growing tips. And I'm just going to shove it right down into the peat moss there. Try to get the ends buried so they're going to continue to suck up moisture as well. And the heads of the moss are going to just keep growing upwards. Do it again, make a little cut, and let's figure out where this is going to go in here. So the idea is I want to make sure when I plant the nepenthes that it's going to be planted in as much sphagnum moss as it is going to be planted in the peat moss itself. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this, and I'm thinking it's going to go slightly off to the left side. Guess that would be the right side looking at the camera. But anyways, we're going to shove it right here. And I'm going to start to make this little area of sphagnum moss that the nepenthes can go into. So I have chosen a nepenthes bellii to go in here. I chose nepenthes bellii because I found A, it does really well in lower lights. B, it is warmer growing, so it can grow in the house. And C, it is a nice miniature species. It's not going to get big at all. It'll be hard pressed to outgrow this terrarium over the course of many years. So it's going to be happy and healthy in here. If you choose the wrong nepenthes species, it's going to outgrow this in no time at all. So we don't want to put a ventricosa in here. We don't want to put a ventrata in here. We want to keep some nice miniature species in here to make sure it lasts for a long time. And I am going to prep the moss for the other side of the nepenthes bellii, and we will just grab it with the tweezers and then shove it in. And I'm placing the moss into the peat moss beside the nepenthes. And bellii I did put sort of just down so he's touching the peat moss and then surrounded by a live moss, and I think that it should do well. Looking at it now, things kind of look off center, so I'm going to just grab this big rock and I think I'm going to move it just a little bit. Again, my view is just, it's a little bit off from what I was thinking it should be, mainly because that darn seam is there for the glass. So let's just move this rock a little bit over here. There we go. Now the nepenthes is off to the side, and I have cleared a little space in the front for my utricularia that's coming up, because I think that's going to grow in the foreground very nicely. So let's get the nepenthes settled in a little bit more. And I think the only thing left before the foreground is, since I have these extra mosses, I'm just going to tuck it in behind the main rock here, just to give it a little bit more dimension. And it looks kind of cool to have the other kind of moss in there as well. So I will tuck that back. And yeah, it looks pretty good. It looks really good, actually. So now the only thing left to do is the utricularia. So I have selected Utricularia bisquamata today. I think that's how you pronounce it, bisquamata, Betty's Bay. And I have enough here that, honestly I have more than enough. I think I'm going to use about 2/3 of this Utricularia. Break it up into little bits and just place it in the foreground. I left this open peat area purposely for this. It'll be nice, hopefully in a few months, to get some little flowers coming up in here as well. So there's not much to this. as long as it's sitting in, around, under, on top of the peat moss, it should start to grow itself and spread honestly throughout the whole little terrarium, and could look quite cool coming up all over the place. But for now, hopefully it takes over the front first. And there we have it, guys. So I think it looks really good. Cute little sealed carnivorous plant terrarium with a nepenthes bailey, Utricularia bisquamata, 3 different kinds of mosses, a couple different kinds of lichens, and yeah, some peat moss. So anyways, we'll put the lid on that. We can set it and forget it. So I hope you like this video, and if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye guys.